Hello, I'm Dana Brooks of Facing Brooks, and this is another episode of the EmPower Hour brought to you by the EmPower Plant. I'm welcome today and joined today by my law partner, Kimmy Hogan. Hey, Kimmy.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm well. I'm well. Thank you for joining us today. And we have got our communications director, Kia Thomas, here. Hey, Kia.
Hi, everyone.
Hey. And we have a very special guest today, Pat Tuthill. And she's here to talk about something no one ever wanted to have to talk about. No one wants to do a show on this, but it's here and it's real and it matters and it deserves attention. And that is talking about the survivors of homicide and talk about an oxymoron, a survivor of homicide. These are the people who are left behind whenever someone's life is cut short and taken from them through violence from someone else. And so she has taken that hurt and that pain and she has created a foundation for her daughter in honor of her daughter who was brutally murdered. Peyton Tuthill. It's the Peyton Tuthill Foundation. So I want to welcome you, Pat. And I want to make a comfortable place for you here today to share your story with us. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and how you came to be an empowered person, and how you empower others who've dealt with what you struggle with every single day still?
Thank you, Dana. It is a lifetime journey and one that doesn't come easy. But the good news is that we can survive it. I didn't think I could survive it. But I have to always say, center in my life is God and my faith. And I rely on that to get me through the most difficult times. Would you like to know what happened just briefly to my young daughter?
We do. We do want to hear your story.
Her name, Peyton. She graduated from the College of Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina, and after that moved to Denver to go to graduate school. So we were all very, very excited for this opportunity. She had a place for 6 months with her sorority sister from the College of Charleston and another friend from Atlanta. It was 11:30 in the morning. She returned to her apartment, a small apartment in one of the gentrified areas of Denver. She had an interview with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. She wanted to volunteer for them. She'd always, her whole life, since childhood, beginning with Vacation Bible School and all through college with Habitat for Humanity, the American Cancer Society, a women's shelter house, and doing music therapy with Alzheimer's patients. So I'm sharing this just because I want you to have a sense of who Peyton is. And so you'll understand the legacy that I want to leave for her. She returned home. They didn't offer her a job, or a volunteer position. They offered her a part-time job. They loved her experience and they loved her passion. She went home to change clothes and let out what I call her Charleston debutante. That was Maggie, her Springer Spaniel. So she went in the front door and she never left again at 11:30 in the morning. There was a young man that had been in her neighborhood at the halfway house for 4 months, and he had stalked her. He was serving 20 years in prison for violent felonies in Maryland. Maryland released him after 22 months of 20 years and put him on a Greyhound bus, sent him across the country with no supervision, letting him go to a halfway house that was run by a convicted heroin addict and trafficker. After 4 months, he broke in to Peyton's home. And he went in the front door or the back door, and she'd entered the front door. She never left again, and it was a very violent and brutal, torturous attack. I have to share with your listeners and viewers, that was on February 24th. I was director of a medical center, not director, but human resources director. I was in a staff meeting the next morning, and at 8:30, the CEO and myself, we were called out of the meeting. I thought certainly something had happened in the clinic, in the medical center, a disgruntled employee, some other problem or issue for me to be called out. When I arrived in my office 10 minutes later, I knew what happened had happened to me, because there were friends that I would have never seen in my office that were standing there with their backs to me, looking out the window that overlooked the YMCA playground. And as I walked in the door, I said, which one? I knew in my heart something must have happened to one of my daughters.
Wow.
But I didn't know the worst of it. There was no sound. No one said a word. And I said, was she skiing? She was learning to ski. And or in a car accident,
Right.
something that you would put.
You could anticipate. You don't expect, but you could anticipate.
Yes. And finally someone spoke and said, no, she was killed. My heart stopped in disbelief, and I thought I misunderstood. I said, what do you mean someone killed her? They said, someone murdered her. Dana, at that moment, my world stopped. I was frozen in time and did not move. The law enforcement arrived, and because of my position, I knew so many of them. And they took me to my house, where my father-in-law was and my husband. They were going to another location to get my daughter, my young daughter. And I point this out because when I talk and I speak, I talk about the victim notification process.
Right.
And how traumatizing it can be.
Yeah.
My young daughter was put into a squad car and said, we're taking you to your mother's, without another word. They did not give her any information. She was truly traumatized.
Truly.
From that moment.
No other word.
Yeah, I just, I can't even, it makes my stomach drop when I talk about that. So we all arrived, and she walked in the door and saw me, her father, her grandfather. And her ex, what? And we told her what happened. And all of us were in shock and in disbelief. Something else I learned in the process that I can share with others. Then there were trauma people that showed up. There were volunteers, and everybody was going to do everything for me. And they were going to call Colorado, and they were going to call Denver. I snapped at everyone and said, I will do the calling. She was my daughter. No one else is going to take that away from me. As I've gone through the years, and I understand about victims' need to have some kind of sense of control
Yeah.
It's the smallest amount of control in an uncontrollable violent situation. So I think they understood that, and they stepped back and just were there to offer support.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was, I can't, and I don't, my heart goes out to the notification people also.
Oh, yeah.
What a horrible situation to deal with, because you're dealing with families,
Yeah.
people who are angry,
Yeah.
confused, and they're the people that are there, and it can be unloaded on those individuals. I came back with a lot of apologies, I have to say. Not that it was expected, but for me, it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, the offender was 23. He was, first of all, someone was arrested within 48 hours. Police called me from Denver and said, we've arrested someone. And again, they were surprised by my reaction. And I think this is important to share, because when people are traumatized, you don't know how they're going to react, what they have to say. And rather than saying, thank you, I'm so glad you've made an arrest, I said, well, I'm surprised. Are you sure you have the right person?
Right.
It doesn't do any good to make an arrest, just to make an arrest if it's the wrong person. This is going to happen. Fast forward 48 hours, I received another call. It was not the perpetrator.
Oh,
And her case was one of the first cases in the country solved by DNA exclusion. In the meantime, the halfway house put him on a Greyhound bus back to Maryland because he had assaulted another resident and a counselor. The police and the investigator called me, and this was a comfort. They said, rest assured, we will find him. We now know who it is. And it took them about 10 days, but they found him. He was in the midst of holding a clerk at a convenience store
oh my goodness.
at knife point, and so he was arrested and tried and convicted. At that point, that was 3 years later. As you know, the criminal justice process turned very slowly,
Yeah.
which is agonizing, all the motions and all the delays. The victim advocates I had were amazing, absolutely amazing, from Denver. And 2.5 months after losing Peyton, because I worked at a medical center, every physician, every friend of mine, I was supplied with every drug that was possible for depression, for anxiety, if I was feeling ill. And I looked 2 months later and I thought, you know what? Why don't I just take a handful of these and maybe I'll be okay.
Yeah.
I will be gone.
Maybe this will finally be over.
Yeah, the nightmare. Well, then I had a brief epiphany that if I did that, I would be in effect killing and taking away my surviving child's life.
Right.
So I got on my knees, Dana. I got down on my knees and I prayed. I said, God, I don't know what it is that you want from me now. And I've been faithful and I don't understand this, but I need a mission. I need to get up. I need to get out of bed, brush my teeth, brush my hair.
Yeah.
Well, an hour later, and I do believe in miracles, I had a call from Representative Jerry Melvin from my district. And he said, I'm so sorry about what happened to your daughter. I've heard. What can I do for you? And I said, I'm going to put clothes on and we're going to figure out what you can do for me. And I went into his office. We made a phone call to the Tallahassee Department of Corrections. And because I was then told by Law Enforcement Colorado and the state's attorney's office about this transfer that happened and how he was sent from Maryland to Denver. So when I came to Tallahassee, I was told that a 1937 law allowed offenders to be transferred from state to state. And some judges used it as banishment
Yeah.
for crimes committed.
I've heard of this. This is real.
Yeah, it's so real. So they hand me a
Just
piece.
don't commit your crimes in my state, go somewhere else. That is kind of, it's unspoken, but I've witnessed this. Just go be a criminal somewhere else.
Yeah, sort of like let's banish you from
Yeah.
our state.
Yeah.
And there you go. So they handed me a sheet of paper front and back and said, well, this is compact, which I wadded up and threw at the bureau chief across his desk. And then I said, I should apologize. He said, no, you
For
shouldn't.
what? For what?
My behavior was so uncharacteristic for who Pat Tuthill
But
is.
it was not unreasonable for the circumstances Pat was under. So I hope you forgive yourself of that, of course.
I did, and you bring up a good point I'll get to later, that forgiveness part. So he said, well, actually, there's a whole document. I said, I want the whole document. So I received a 3-inch manual that I went through, and 3 weeks after that, I was back again in Tallahassee meeting with Governor Bush. And I said I wanted to, stop this. And then I was contacted by the American Parole and Probation Association, and they asked me to come to New York and speak and address American Probation, their annual conference, and another organization of people and administrators that handle this compact travel. So I did agree and said yes. And as I'm going along, I'm sorry, I have to share my amazing stories with you.
I want you to.
I want
I want you to. This is your forum, please.
I want people to believe in the power. So the day before I left, I did not pick up my mail, out of my mailbox. The morning I left at 5:30 in the morning for the airport, I picked up that mail. And it was dated August 20th, 1998. Peyton died in 1999. But I received her letter 1 year later, a postcard on the date that I was leaving for New York. And on the back, she had written, Dear Mom, I am Colorado, sitting in my broken down rental car, of course, or I'm sitting in my broken down car, waiting for a ride, but I love Colorado. It's so beautiful, and I wish you were here with me. I'm having the time of my life, and in her signature heart, Peyton. So I went to New York knowing that I would not fail, that I had strength and my message would be delivered. Now, if you think about this, it was in April, May that I said my prayers. And so all the things that happened in a short 2 months was none of my doing, none of my doing whatsoever. I was just responding to all the opportunities that were there for me accepting that one phone call from my state representative. And I call that the beginning of the freight train.
Yeah.
So I had a mission.
Tell us about your freight train.
Pardon?
Tell us about the freight train.
The freight train was, I realized I had a mission. I was able, because of my corporate background, do the only thing I knew how to do was present a PowerPoint about what was wrong that I could see from a layperson with this document in this whole process and all the flaws and the dangers. The National Institute of Corrections, Bureau of Justice, they were there. And after I knew how powerful I had been, and I delivered to my audience, how could I fail? I had God here holding me up in Peyton, and I showed him the card. So, Bureau of Justice, National Institute of Corrections, they said, we want to sponsor you and work with you to get new legislation through. So then I worked with them and I started, and then I worked on my own, doing my own outreach and traveled the country. Did I have a lot of money? No. I worked for medical centers, an HR director, had 2 children that were very active and everything. And my family was the center of my life and giving back to the community. But
Pat, let me ask you a few things because I want to help our listeners and our viewers with your journey. You started out with the parents of murdered children. You started out participating in that. How does that differ from what you're doing? And tell us a little bit more about that. It's a club nobody wants to be in.
no, it's not. And
tell us about it.
Parents of Murdered Children, they're an amazing organization and have very affordable annual conferences or provide scholarships for surviving family members, for parents, and offer an amazing abundance of tools and resources on their website. They help connect people with legal services, with support groups of other grieving parents and other resources. They help with law information, and the services are so varied and so many that I encourage everyone to take advantage. And what happens? They find you. They find you. Which I received a card from them, a sympathy card and information. And I was like, how do they know? Well, that's part of what they do. They make it their business to find out and let survivors know they're there for a resource.
Pat, we don't, sometimes we represent people who are victims of homicide. It's less common than when it's a negligent, wrongful death. But I found that grief is so specific, and I know, Kimmy, with your clients, the same thing. It is so unique, and there's places that can help you, and they reach out to you. But sometimes, this is what I've learned, is sometimes when these organizations reach out to you, you're not ready for it. You don't want to hear what they have to say. You don't want to hear them come at you with a formula and a treatment plan because you're like, I'm not like them. My daughter, wasn't like your daughter. I don't want to hear this from you. And it's so hard to know how to be there for someone who has experienced the worst possible thing imaginable.
You
Not
are
just,
exactly right.
not just the loss of a child, but the loss of a child through violence and just horror. So what, not that it's your job, but so many people want to reach out to people who've experienced the horrors. Can you give us any guidance into how to help and how to love you the right way?
Uh, First of all, don't be offended. Don't take anything personal.
It's not about us.
And and that happens because what happens, and I work with people and they say, so and so came up to me and I couldn't believe, the most stupid, ridiculous comments or questions like, he's in a better place kind of thing. Um, it was meant to happen. Or, well, did she know him? Where was she? Where you get that,
Like there's some culpability.
right, that
My Lord.
blaming. And those are the things that make you angry. And at first I responded with my anger, but I finally learned that I could do that, or people don't know how to deal with it.
Right.
People are very uncomfortable. She said, so I decided to use it as an opportunity to educate people.
Yeah.
And I would let them know how it made me feel. And in a kind way,
Right.
to say, in case this happens with someone else, let me give you some suggestions. Because, as she said, they want to help, but they don't know how.
No.
So this leaves the door open for them not to be blasted, or what they are, if they think they're going to respond with anger, use it as a teaching moment and let those people help them.
Yeah. Kimmy, I'm interested to hear from you because, like I said, you represent victims of personal injury, but your husband, and I hope, he doesn't mind me giving him a shout out, but Dan Hogan, he's just an honorable lawyer. He's a wonderful person. He was with the public defender's office for many years and was chief. And then now he's in private practice. But I know you two deal with crime victims and people who have lost people they love through no fault of their own, whether it's intentional, negligent, culpable, whatever. I don't care, whatever, you want to describe it. What are you thinking when you hear this powerful story today from Pat?
Well, I thank you so much, Pat, for sharing it with us. He and I are over here trying to not to lose our lose our
100%.
crying so much. But thank you for sharing it. It's so awesome, all the good work that you've done for the system, the criminal justice system, and I'm excited to hear more about that from you today. But yes, I represent many people who have lost a loved one, mostly through negligence of a driver in a car crash, a drunk driver, and certainly that's something I always think about, that it would be beneficial for us as somebody who's trying to be supportive to them through the legal process to probably go through more training about how to talk to and be supportive of people who are going through all that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that would be totally beneficial. Pat, I want to talk to you because, our time here is limited and you've done a lot of good work in a short amount of time. When I talk last about Marcy's Law, but I want to talk right now, you've lobbied for the Interstate Compact, which tracks parolees and probationers and makes sure these people don't get lost and somebody doesn't just shove them out of their state and burden another state with them, and there's no tracking, there's no accountability. You've done so much, and like you said, you gave up a very successful career to do this and make it your life's work, and you've lobbied in all 50 states, if I'm right. So tell me about the Interstate Compact.
Well, as I said, I knew that there had to be a better way to do this. And I, at first I was going to oppose nationally any kind of compact, but I realized if I did that, then there would be absolutely no control over what was happening. And violent people or criminals could be transferred from state to state, or they could just pick up and leave, and the other states wouldn't know it, and public safety would be at greater risk. And I use the word public safety loosely because it could be my family, your family's, anyone's family. So the last bill signing was with Mitt Romney. I had in Massachusetts in 2005, right. October 2005, and they became the 50th state to enact the compact. And then from that point, I served on the national drafting committee for drafting the rules of the compact. So next year will be the 20-year anniversary. Once all 35 states done, I know it's all 50. So there will be, it's interesting, Dana, because I'm going back to New York where the journey began. But that is now in place, and amazing work is being done for public safety and victims when victims are involved in the process. So when an offender applies for a transfer and wants to go from one state to another, the victim is notified. And then when the offender leaves the state, there is a departure notice. When they arrive in the other state, they receive an arrival notice, so they know. And that was one of the things, one of the biggest fears is not knowing what if someone is out of prison or sentenced probation and not knowing where they are.
Right.
And particularly for the sexual assault victims is particularly terrifying. So there are a lot of things that are built in for, again, and victims can be heard in the process. They have a voice and they can support or not support and provide the reasons. They're given an opportunity to, and domestic violence is another huge issue, to make a safety plan. And that is critical to well-being in thinking that you can survive, that there's going to be any price, that you're not going to walk around the corner and see the offender. Someone asked me to use the word clients the other day. I'm like, that doesn't come out of my mouth.
Client?
Clients, to call them clients.
Yeah, no, like you're making money off of them. That doesn't feel right.
I'm like, no. I said, I'll call them perpetrators.
Right.
Offenders. I said, I'll call them parolees and probationers, but to call them clients.
That doesn't feel right. May I ask you something? What was Peyton's interest in the cystic fibrosis community? That's a very small, very prominent part of your life if it affects you, but it doesn't affect that many people. So I'm curious.
You know what? She had energy and a passion to help.
Yeah.
Whatever she thought it was. And she loved, and she knew some people that had brothers or sisters that had cystic fibrosis. And that was why she did music therapy. She had a passion for elderly patients and Alzheimer, and then also her passion for domestic violence, where she was a volunteer at a place called My Sister's House, and then adopted a family of 5 children while she was in college as part of a philanthropy for 1 year, and then they would go on to a different one. And she said, please become my kids. I just can't.
They do. They do. I have more children.
Yeah.
I feel like that. The more I mentor, the more children I have. I'm like, oh my goodness, there's so many. But I'm so blessed to feel like I've been meaningful in their lives, and that's what it's like to give back when you've been hurt or when you've been blessed extraordinarily. Maybe a combination of both. And I see that so much in you. You are so gifted in your intelligence and your big, kind heart, but you've been so hurt by something unimaginable. But yet you combine both those things together to change other people's lives. And you don't get anything for it other than just knowing that the world is better because you're here. So wonderful. I'm so glad you are here. So I would like to hear from Kia. you've been hearing this all day or for the last 45 minutes or so or whatever, and I've seen you dabbing your face.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep it together, girl. I'm trying to keep it together.
Oh,
No, you're a mama.
yeah.
Jump. You start your day and end your day as a mama. So
Yes.
what are you thinking when you hear this?
A lot. I think that's the reason why all of us were crying, because you hear her story and it automatically, look, I'm about to cry again. These emotions, I just had a baby. So it's like emotions are everywhere.
It's not even fair for you.
It's not.
You're not even at baseline.
You hear that and you automatically think about her child being your child. And it's like, regardless of who she was, it's like you automatically put yourself in her shoes. And you turned the situation that could have turned so negative, because like you say, they never know how someone's going to grieve or how someone's going to respond, but you made such an impactful response to it. And that's something that we preach around here, being empowered. And I think that's what you did. You took up that whole reins and you became empowered. One of the things that have stuck with me is that they have become your kids. Is that a part of the scholarship program that you also offer? Do they go to the kids of the victims? Or is it just a scholarship program just for anyone who has gone through this?
Great questions, Kia, because I wanted to get into that. The Peyton Tuthill Foundation offers scholarships, advocacy, and awareness to homicide survivors. Like I said, very weird term. That's great, Kia. Thank you for asking. Well, how does the scholarships work? How do you recruit people? How do you choose people? What are you doing now to make so much good come from the worst possible thing that could have ever happened to you?
In the journey to have the legislation passed, I encountered thousands of victims and families and spoke to a lot of annual conferences. And I wanted to do something. And then in 2005, I thought, I know the perfect thing to do, because the children, what I call them, the children of homicide, the grieving parent or parents, or maybe there's no parents or foster care, they're forgotten. After the headlands go away, they're forgotten. And I thought I can help them. So the foundation is small. I have what I call my posse here and friends, help me with it. So like for my fundraiser particularly, but anyway, this on my website, anyone can go on, see all the information, download an application. They're given to kids, and I call them kids. I'm almost 73, so anybody under 60 is a kid, okay? Put it in perspective. But they can apply online, and I require a year of grief counseling of some kind. And it can be through parents of murdered children, compassionate friends, a minister, hospice, a support group, maybe a counselor, but and they might not be in it yet. That's going to be a condition of receiving for the scholarship. So, and all that's verified. I verify the death. It's a child that's lost their parent or parents or siblings to homicide. Their lives are shattered. Their lives are shattered, and it's so small. It's so small. I want it to be huge. Okay, huge. The need is so great. I award $1,000 scholarship, and it was going to be just for 1 year. Well, after that first year, I thought, well, what am I going to do? Just say bye and let them go?
You don't want them to have to quit school or whatever. Yeah.
So they now get it for 4 years, and they go up. Now I'm up to $2,000 for seniors, $1,500 for undergrad. But here's the biggest benefit. I have to share it. It fills me up. They have become my kids, because I'm the person, when there's no one else they can talk to, they don't want to talk to the parent because they don't want to upset the parent. They text, they email, they call. They know I'm available for them 24/7. And then the other amazing benefit, unintended benefit, was I've helped them form a network too.
Yeah.
So I can pair some domestic violence child survivors with other ones, or random whatever, and they've even become their own little family. I have amazing interns that help me do this, and volunteers from FSU. And they have to write an essay, and I have to share with you, I only require a 2.5 and GPA, and I say that, and people say, well, that's not very much. I'm like, have you been traumatized in your life?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's just fine. That's just fine.
Yeah, we're a trauma-informed organization, and we understand trauma, and I help combine these.
Even getting into school, staying in school, a 2.5, that's very much winning in many ways. And so the more distracting variables you can control, and the more they can stay within that structure of learning, educating themselves, the better. But I think we need to stop discounting people based on just a few metrics. I think people deserve a little more consideration than just a few metrics. But I want to ask you one thing though, and I want to, Whitney Moore is our producer. Whitney, are you ready to cue the Marcy's Law video? Because I would love to show that right now, because you have done so much with victim protection and to control for victim exploitation.
For Morrissey's Law.
Wow. Wow. Tell us what that is and why that was important to you to advocate for.
I was fortunate. Colorado, I realized, kept me informed every step of the way, had me involved in the entire process. Because the work I do, I soon learned that is not the normal practice or case. Most families are surprised by a court hearing, maybe the day before date, or there is a motion to dismiss or a motion to delay. They show up, and it's a great effort to show up. They don't find out, they don't know. So Marcy's Law is now in the Florida Constitution, and there are specific rights that victims have. They have those rights in statute also, but having them in the Constitution elevates that right to another level, and it can't just be changed because the voters of Florida voted for it, and it was in the last election and incorporated. So I feel it's a real victory for victims to have some assurances in the state of Florida. And Marcy's Law is moving throughout the country.
Love it. Love it. Kimmy, what are you thinking?
I wanted to know more about the documentaries that you've been a part of. Watching that clip made me think about that. I know you filmed a documentary for Discovery ID, is that right?
I did, and I was opposed to that, very opposed to it.
Tell us
I-
about that.
I have, because it's a very private story,
Yeah.
and I knew it would be painful, and I wasn't sure. And I said, I had been asked for about 6 years by all the different networks to do something and didn't. And then I realized that after talking to the producers, they were going to do a story anyway, regardless. So at that point, I thought, well, if that's the case, I want my voice in. And I also wanted information about this compact so people would know that it existed. And again, they have a voice. And then I told them I want money. And they're not going to give you any money. But I said, here's the deal breaker. You could at least donate $1,000 to the foundation for one scholarship. And they said, well, we'll do our best. I said, well, better than your best. Show up with $1,000.
Better. Do better than your best. This is what I wanted to ask you about. You know, I wanted to ask about fundraising because everything you do, you know, that costs money. All the people who are forgotten, in order for them to be remembered, it takes money. It takes advocacy, and it takes people going around and getting people's attention and banging on the doors. So how do you raise money, and how can we help you in that regard?
I bang on the doors. But I have, you know what, it's really about, and I think as you know better than me, establishing a relationship.
Right.
Forming that relationship, and in places where I do business, I'll ask them. I do online, you know, birthday fundraisers. I do anniversary, you know, online. And then I do my annual wine and cheese tasting in Tallahassee this year. Of course, last year it was canceled. This year it's online. And when you ask and let people know what it's for, it's amazing what they can donate. And I have found not to ask for big things.
Right.
If I'm working with local, I ask for small things that somebody can give a $20 gift certificate. And then I will combine them with other small things and make nice themed baskets. I tell people, if you have something new in your house that you've never used,
Right.
and it's nice, give it to me. I'll use it, and I have no shame. I'll ask anybody for money
I love it.
because you know what?
To me, that's a passion project. When you have no shame, you have no shame. That's a passion project. What were you saying? I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. And I, you know what? And I always let everybody know when I ask, no is an okay answer.
Yeah.
I accept it. It's fine.
Yeah.
And you can't. I understand. And when people give me more than I asked for, I cry. I'm gonna cry talking about it because I have been so blessed with so much kindness and people willing to help.
You have made all of us cry here today. And in many sad ways, Pat, of course, because of Peyton, but in many good ways, because I just got renewed in my faith in humanity because I know there's people like you in the world. So thank you for making it awesome to wake up every day. But can I ask you a couple of other things?
Absolutely.
Okay, I know about the Peyton Tuthill Foundation, and I know that you're about awareness, you're about scholarships, advocacy, but tell me about some of the recipients. I went online and I learned about some of these people. You have changed some lives, lady.
I say I now have 3 young attorneys.
Yay.
Lawyer babies.
Yeah, all my babies launching their careers. I have an international human resources specialist with JP Morgan. Teachers, nurses, some psychology, physical therapist, environmental project people,
What?
engineers,
Ow.
health and nutrition. And the foundation is blind. Anybody who has suffered this kind of trauma is eligible to receive a scholarship. And it's hard for me to say no to somebody. And I try to figure out a way. And one of my most exciting past year, she was told by high school counselors she was not college material. And her,
You know what? I was too. If it makes you feel any better, I was told that too.
it took me forever to get into business college. They're like, no, go away. But I'm a kid. Here I am.
Nobody knows anything.
Yeah. And she has been on the dean's list twice last year.
100%. Yeah.
100%. So, and I have law enforcement children that were parents were law enforcement that are, one of them is the first RN right out of school that the Winnie Palmer Hospital has hired in pediatrics in Orlando. And those 2.5 GPAs, guess what? They went up to 3.
They rule the world. They end up ruling the world.
Yeah, 3.4, and they're not afraid.
Mhm.
They're not afraid to tackle anything.
No, they're scrappy. I like a scrappy person. I'm scrappy.
They're scrappy. I'm
I
scrappy.
like a scrappy person. Listen to me. I have been so excited. I started this program because I told everybody, I said, listen, this is serious. This is not a fun show, y'all. Okay. And I started this show like everybody else did. And for the first 30 minutes, we were all dabbing the eyes. We were crying. And then I'm ended up smiling. And I'm so full of joy. And my face, I'm just so happy. I'm so happy that you're in my life and that you're doing all these things in other people's lives. I just can't believe what you have made of what was dealt to you. I want to ask you this. I know you told us about your faith. Do you have any insight for people who maybe are not faith directed and maybe just some people who are just on their last leg and they just think, I can't take this. Someone took my child from me.
Mhm.
I know you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
what would you say? What would you say to those people?
And I can understand not having faith centered. And I say to those people, go to a counselor, go to a support group. And I say that because you have friends you can share with, but you don't want to burn out your friends.
Yeah, sometimes you do, sometimes you think you do, and then they're just like, I can't take it. I'm not prepared for this.
Right, because it weighs heavily, so heavily on them. And that will turn people away.
Right.
So you want to utilize resources that are available to you, such as, and you know what, it can be any grief support group, because maybe if you find a grief support group, it'll help you move into the right. And you pointed out something that was so important. My first meeting at Compassionate Friends, I thought, I do not belong here. I don't have one thing in common with any of these people, and I don't really want to talk to these strangers about what I'm feeling,
Right.
and what I'm doing.
Deeply personal.
And then I did go to everyone, and you mentioned sometimes people reach out to you and you're not ready yet. And when that happens, write down who reached out to you and put it on a list and put it in a drawer somewhere, because at some point you might be ready to. And then I say, follow me around for a couple weeks and you will become faith-centered. I don't put it in your face, but I'm just an example of what, when you let go and let God.
Yeah.
People think I'm scattered sometimes and unorganized, and I may seem that way. But when I get up in the morning, I'm told what my plan is for the day or my mission. And that's how I live my life.
You know
And
what? So many people envy that of you. And so how unique a perspective you have, knowing that you have endured the worst thing anybody can imagine, yet so many people envy your inner peace and your direction and your centeredness. So I want to thank you, Pat, for sharing your experience with us and your unique hurt, your suffering. I want to thank you because you
Thank
didn't have to do that. And I know you've affected people by sharing your story with us. But I want to thank you also, Kia Thomas. Thank you for being with us today. Because Kia and Kimmy, you are willing to be here with us. And I told you this is not going to be a fun one. This is not gonna, we're not gonna blow up a bunch of balloons after this one. We're not gonna have a bunch of cocktails over this one. This one's quite serious. But this is the EmPower Hour. And we made this thing called the EmPower Plant. You know what I mean?
love it.
So we want to understand that every journey you have, every day you have isn't sunshine and flowers. Sometimes shit sucks.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just sucks.
Mhm.
So thank you, Pat, for sharing your journey with us. Thank you for Kimmy and Kia for witnessing this and experiencing it with us.
And may I add one thing?
Please.
If anybody, I would hope that some of you, you're often come to my fundraiser. I'll send you the flyer. And also, if you could let people know if anybody wants to sponsor a table, I have like 5 different levels of sponsorship. And then I have a couple of tables that I have sponsored for victims and their families.
To make it possible for someone else to attend something like this. Will you please share that with us? And we'll share it on all of our platforms, obviously. But Pat, thank you. That was such a personal journey, such a personal experience and sharing. And it reminds us every day to be thankful for what we do have. Never take it for granted. And then remember that when we need to give back to people who don't have what we have.
Now you're going to make me cry.
Oh,
I don't want to. I
Thank
don't get any joy out of that, but we feel what we feel. And I feel like having a little emotion right now. I know Kia and Kimmy do, and I know you've shared yours with us, and I couldn't be more honored by that. So thank you, Pat.
It's been a privilege to be here. Thank you. And I look forward to getting to know you ladies better.
definitely.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you next Thursday at 4:30 for another EmPower Hour by the EmPower Plant.